Queensland's Deputy Police Commissioner Paul Taylor has resigned from the force effective immediately over callous language used during a speech at a leadership conference in April. Joining me live is Dr Terry Goldsworthy, criminal justice and criminology expert. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Jamie.
So you've actually just written an article in today's Courier Mail. The article's titled "Katarina Carroll Owed It to Victims of Domestic Violence." Doctor, can you just bring us up to speed for people who may have missed this story and just give us a brief overview?
Yes, well, there was a women's safety task force that was formed some 2 years ago, thereabouts, and they delivered their final report. And one of the recommendations was that there's an inquiry into the culture of the Queensland Police in terms of their responses to domestic and family violence. And that is currently taking place as we speak, that inquiry. So during the course of that, there has been some concerning evidence come out in terms of the cultural issues inside the Queensland Police in terms of how they respond to domestic and family violence. And this week, the Commissioner of the Queensland Police gave evidence and a number of issues came out. I guess the first one that struck me was that the Commission, in their questioning, highlighted the fact that the Commissioner did not want to attend the inquiry to give evidence. And it was only in reality when the threat of a subpoena was made that the Commissioner appeared. And I find that really difficult to accommodate, because I would have thought as the Commissioner in charge of this organisation that responds to domestic and family violence, you would want to go to that Commission and hear what the issues are in terms of the culture of your organisation. And you'd want to do that for nothing more than to show victims of domestic and family violence that you're prepared to take on board the learnings from those issues and try and improve your responses if there is a need to improve them. And clearly, in some of the evidence coming forward, there is a need to improve the cultural responses of the Queensland Police Service.
And in your article, you talk about the outcome and some of the responses actually getting worse and more people read. Can you give us an example of one of these situations?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, what we see is there was a couple of coronial inquiries early this year where people contacted police, multiple times. And despite there being obvious risk factors identified, etc., the person was still killed by the partner. Now, the coroner did make the observation in one of those matters that if someone is motivated enough, it is very difficult to stop them. But in the other matter, the coroner identified a number of failings in terms of officers not doing what they should have done to help prevent the domestic violence death that occurred. So, and you see commentary from senior police, I'm talking Deputy Commissioner level here, that when these things occur, they're described as a system gap, some kind of risk management issue. I argue that it's time that they accepted that this is a crime issue and it is a crime crisis. And I identified this back in 2016 when we had 4 domestic violence murders and very public murders too, that occurred in the space of about 1 or 2 weeks, that there needs to be a change in the cultural approach to how domestic and family violence crime is dealt with, and should be dealt with as a crime issue, not an administrative issue to fix up the risk management practices.
And also with laws being looked at with coercive control, how do you think these types of situations should be approached?
Well, look, I think coercive control will be very difficult to police. And I mean, a number of academics have written on the issues around implementing coercive control laws, that it is much subtler than, I guess, damage to property or physical attacks on people and things like that. So, I mean, that will be a difficult issue for them to implement. I think they'll need to take their time and be very careful on how they define coercive control and how the police are trained to approach identifying what is and what is not coercive control. That's going to be a real challenge for them, on top of already dealing with the issues that they have coming out of dealing with their domestic violence responses as they are at the moment.
And what about getting back to culture? Do we start at the top of the chain? What has got to happen with this?
Yeah, I think that there is some issues at the top of the chain, and that was illustrated this week with a Deputy Commissioner and Chief Superintendent evidence being given to the Commissioner as to inappropriate commentary by those 2 officers. The Deputy Commissioner resigned yesterday as a result of that commentary that was made public. Commentary that was misogynistic, sexist in its nature, made in formal settings in front of numerous senior officers. The fact that they would feel comfortable making those comments astounds me. The fact that the response by the Queensland Police at the time was the lowest level of reaction, and I'm talking there about guidance was given, managerial correction. Yet, if it was done in corporate enterprise outside of the police service, I'd imagine those people would have been sacked with that kind of behaviour. And only after that behaviour became public did we see the kind of reaction that we got yesterday. And I think that really calls into question the judgment of the current Commissioner, Katarina Carroll, who has said she wants her taking on of DV to be her legacy. And I've got a feeling that she needs to be very careful. The legacy will be for all the wrong reasons in failing to ensure that the culture of the police is appropriate when dealing with the domestic and family violence.
And we do have to wrap it up, Dr. Goldsworthy, but do you think we're seeing with this situation, with the Royal Commission into the Veterans Suicide and Defence and other situations that we're seeing, there's a common theme: transparency is needed and accountability?
Yes, certainly good governance, transparency and accountability are crucial in terms of these responses. And, myself and many other people have made recommendations or submissions to the Commission in terms of how we could improve that. Then the first part is by ensuring that the appropriate culture, and overwhelmingly the police respond well to domestic family violence. It's ensuring that people understand very clearly what an appropriate culture is in these modern times, and what was appropriate or seen to be appropriate 20, 30 years ago will no longer be tolerated. And I think we saw some examples of that this week. Yeah,
it certainly has changed. And thank you so much for your time. And people can read that on News Corp and the Courier Mail, that article that you just wrote on this situation. Dr. Terry Goldsworthy, criminal justice and criminology expert, thank you so much for your time and expertise.
Thanks, Jamie.